God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. But God only knows the real you. There's a kind of love that God only knows.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 71 of Your Journey Is Not Over. My name is Tanya Pearson Randolph. This is my own personal journey, and the expressions and opinions are of my own. I own all the rights to my personal journey and to Your Journey Is Not Over. Neither are to be used, copied, or edited in any way without my consent. Well, I said in last Thursday's episode that I was getting off track again, and this is an episode that I truly think needs to be shared. Perfect timing, too. It's election time. Hang tight, you'll soon learn why I say that. First off, let me start by saying, yes, there have been some unjust things I've had to experience and go through, and of course, never know justice. Even to date, with a recent experience that I haven't even gotten to yet. But hold tight, I will get there. Still getting transcripts and statistics and calling on all my friends in the podcast industry to help me to cover that topic. A worldwide epidemic and growing by the numbers while we speak. Awareness is the key to everything, and creating awareness is then the key to change, in which we desperately need worldwide. Today, I do want to bring awareness to, again, I'm sure most have never thought of. My mind operates different than most. One must never forget that. I observe, I ask questions, I learn, I absorb like a sponge, and I try and bring awareness and discuss topics that most think are taboo, or shy away from for fear of backlash, harassment even. God said, like Jesus, speak the truth, open up people's minds, change perceptions, and even Jesus was ran out of his own village because he did as he was told and directed to do by God. People in his village didn't know what to make or how to take someone who was created to be different than the rest, and whom thought and taught different than what was believed prior. And still the naysayers could not stop what was directed by God. Jesus continued to preach and teach about God, regardless what anyone thought. Thank goodness he had the faith and the courage to continue on his path, his journey, because where would we be now had he not? My opinion, there would be a lot of lost souls out there, more than what we already have. Yes, opinions are something every one of us have, but having an opinion and having the courage to speak on it are two totally different things completely. And without others having the courage to speak on it, to give others a completely different perspective, a completely different view. As people know, I have a voice, and I've never shied away from using it since I was given the permission to use it. Do I save my breath, my energy to speak on topics that are important? Yes. I don't give my energy, my time, nor my breath to just anything. It has to be something I'm passionate about completely. And I am passionate about change. We need changes made, and unless people see other perspectives, then changes are never made. I myself had to be brought up to date, learn to move and grow with the times. I couldn't and can't stay stuck in old school ways, old fashioned thinking. I've been called an old soul my whole life, and even though my soul might be from the 1800s, early 1900s, at least that's how it feels to me. God has reminded me that even though I have an old soul, it is 2025. Again, I got to move and grow and adapt with the times. Another crash course I've had to study and learn. Finally, to get where I wanted to start this podcast. Again, my pen just blows. God takes over and leads my hand and writes what he once heard. Out of sight, out of mind is what I'll call this episode. We all have heard that phrase, right? What I have learned, observed, had many conversations with many of my friends in law enforcement about, And during these many conversations, I could not only see their frustrations, I could feel them. Most, not all of my friends went to college and studied criminal justice, and then upon graduation, then became police officers. Their dream, what they had worked and studied so hard for. And most were becoming who they set out to become as a child. You know, what do you want to be when you grow up, kind of thing? A nurse, a doctor, a fireman, a police officer, and mine was a kindergarten teacher. So to see their excitement, their eagerness to somehow make a change, serve and protect our city, the very city that they grew up in, the people that they grew up around. Who better to serve and protect our city than those from here? And who better to know what needs to be changed, where our city's weak spots are, what areas to strengthen, and who better to relate, right? Well, rookies, as they call themselves, are eager and full of fire. They're ready to hit the ground running and again make changes. And because we only see them, working the beat on the streets, on the calls, first ones in whatever call. And yes, every call is unique, every call is different. I'm sure it's mentally and emotionally draining. What those see in an 8-hour shift, most couldn't handle in a lifetime. And they're expected to solve problem after problem all day long. We see them, we interact with them, and they get to see the trauma, the tears, the crimes, the rights and the wrongs on the spot. First responders, firsthand, right? Well, what I've learned, those eager rookies have to learn real quick how the good old boy system operates. And if they don't fall in line, don't get a follow those law books that they had in college. They forget everything that they learned prior. I'm quite sure corruption wasn't taught in any college nor armed forces. So then these new police officers, these rookies, are given a new playbook. Talk about taking the wind out of their sails, right? And it's either play by the rules of corruption or life can become real hard for them. At work, there's backlash, blackballed. So as anything in life, people have to adjust and learn to adapt in order to keep their jobs, their health benefits. They keep their head down and their mouth shuts and go along with the program. Most of the time, as unlawful as it is. Again, laws sway like the wind here in my town, depending on who breaks the law. Well, it depends on if it's enforced or not. Well, this could be something as simple as a speeding ticket. Yes, I've heard stories throughout the years of wives of the mayor, other police officers' wives, family members, judges, even attorneys getting pulled over for such thing as speeding and drinking and driving. Of course, things no one else heard about. Small town vibes and everything does circulate, but no charges, no fines, no tickets. And if there were tickets, they disappeared quickly. And most of the time, the police officer who stopped whoever and gave the ticket, doing their job, what they get paid to do, well, they would find themselves in hot water, called on the red carpet, is what I like to call it, defending their position. How twisted is that, right? That the higher ups, the mayor's office, the judges, the prosecutors, the district attorneys, somehow twist it to where the police officer did something wrong instead of whomever's family member or whoever is somebody in our city. I call them the untouchables. My thought is whoever shouldn't have been speeding or drinking and driving, then that police officer wouldn't have had to do their job. Again, their job, what they took an oath to do, to protect and serve. Can you imagine finding yourself in that situation, all because you were doing your job? Now let's talk about the regular calls that they're sent out on. Again, no matter the call, they are the eyes and the ears on the scene for the prosecution and for the state. And I've heard the same song and dance from so many of my friends. They get the call, again, first one's in, and most of the time, they have no clue what they're walking into. Only what's been conveyed to 911 dispatch and then to them. They see the deaths, the overdoses, the suicides, the murder victims, the domestics. The list goes on and on. Again, they're the eyes and the ears for the prosecution in the state. And can you imagine time after time writing, typing out every detail, being graphic, and spending hours making sure that their reports are worded correctly as to convey the nature of what they seen, what they heard, what they witnessed, making sure every I was dotted, every T was crossed, just so that our district attorney's office and our prosecutors would take 5 seconds to read it and not find a flaw in the report, and to pursue charges against whomever. Again, imagine being that police officer that seen it and witnessed horrendous things and knew justice needed to be served. Somebody needed to be held accountable for whatever. Then to take the time, care enough to make a detailed graphic police report, and later to find out all that was in vain. If charges were brought, they would later be dropped or pled out to nothing. Plea agreements are common everywhere, but it rather defeats our police officers' efforts, again, to do their job. So I'm sure burnout comes real quick for those rookies who just wanted to protect and serve the same community that they grew up in. First, the laundry list of who you can and cannot pull over, the untouchables. For speeding or drinking and driving. Those laptops in the police cars now come in handy for that. It saves a lot of police officers from pulling over the wrong people, getting into hot water, being called on the red carpet. Those special people, the untouchables, that don't have to follow the laws. The police officers can now plug into that plate number before they flip their lights on. Last name, who you are, who you're related to, business you're affiliated with or that you own. Sleeping with, and yes, our city narcs. Like I said, a huge laundry list of people they can't make a traffic stop on. A normal response, one would think, is to tell whoever not to speed, not to drink and drive. I personally would have made an example out of whoever, made it known, loud and proud. Probably a good thing I never become a police officer, because I could have never played by the good old boy system's rules. No, I can't see it. More laws and rules are being broken in those city offices than out here on the streets. Corruption starts at the top, and it's like a virus. It makes its way through our entire community, through our entire city. Our police officers try, but they're up against the district attorney, the prosecutors, the judges, who in turn get to play God in our cities. It's them who decide who gets justice and who doesn't, when according to our Constitution of our country, everyone deserves justice. And justice shouldn't matter who you are, or in my city, who you aren't, the color of one's skin, who you're related to, nor who committed the crime. If you know the right people, you can get out of almost anything. Somehow the charges just go away, as if the crime never happened. Like I said, out of sight, out of mind. Well, the police officers take all the frustration, the backlash from the public, the resentment, the anger, the confusion, which turns to anger. Want to know why? Because we see them. They're accessible to us. They're on the beat, on the streets. First ones we see. So we hold them accountable because, again, we see them. That's where the record needs to be set straight. These police officers don't make any decisions beyond that report. It's out of their hands. And then to the district attorney, the prosecutor's office, who, again, they sit in their nice, comfortable, air-conditioned offices, and they get to play God with people's lives. They are out of sight, out of mind, until election time. Only time we see them. Most don't congregate with middle-class people in the town that they serve. Yes, there's golf outings and there's political gatherings, but to really talk to people, get on another level, be relatable, no. And yes, we have many prosecutors, and in most states, these prosecutors who may be called district attorneys or state's attorneys or prosecuting attorneys are elected into their positions, which means you and I have a voice, and we have the power to elect people who will protect and serve the law and not let the law sway like branches on a tree when the wind blows. Let's not elect and pay these people generous salaries to continue on with the good old boy system ways. Like I said in the beginning, We all must make way for changes to be able to shed the 1800s, the early 1900s ways. It is 2025, and we need changes. And if that means exchange of power, then that's what it means. We, the people, have the power, not the people in those offices. Time to humble and strip power away from those that think they're untouchable, those that think they're God in our cities, and those that are running our cities in the ground, not to mention our police officers, the ones on the street working the beat. In my city, because of the limits imposed and the corruption, most of the people I grew up with and that became police officers, well, most have quit and moved on to work at police departments in other cities, other counties. Working in Muncie, Indiana, and being forced to go by the good old boys system wasn't what they signed up for. And with no changes, what's the saying? One city's loss is another city's gain. And we've lost a lot of good men and women that grew up in my city and wanted to protect, wanted to serve their own people, their own town, their own communities, and were forced out and chose to go elsewhere to protect and serve, as they've taken an oath to. And without the laundry list of untouchables and corruption blocking people from justice. Mayors, judges, chief of police, and prosecutors and district attorneys are out of sight, and by human nature, they're out of our minds. Well, I wanted to bring these people of power to the forefront, hold them accountable for a change, let them be seen, bring them to people's minds, especially when people vote. We need to be out with the old and in with the new, get rid of corruption, bring equality and fairness to all cities, not just mine. We, the people, have a voice, and according to our First Amendment right, we can use it. Let's put the blame where it needs to go and stop holding police officers accountable for things beyond their control. It does give one something to think about. Please think about this when you vote. We deserve people that will bring justice to all and not sweep it under the rug, nor pick and choose who gets justice. They're not God, and it's time they stop acting like it. And what's the saying? God giveth power, and God can taketh away. Let's change things. Let's shake things up. We, the people, have the power to do it. Now let's use it. This concludes my podcast for today. Please join me Thursday, listen in, and always remember, your journey is not over. God bless.
God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows.